Not a first date, but a last date. We had a guy who would bring his secretary in for lunch 3 times a week. Our per-person average at lunch was $125. Everyone knew he was married because he'd bring his wife and kids to dinner 3 times a week, at $200 per person average, often on the same day. Well, one day he realized he needed to dump his secretary. He did it at our restaurant. We all watched it happen too because she started crying so hard, and they were center of attention for everyone to see. To make things weirder, he did it early in the meal and he drove her there. So she came and hung out with the employees until his lunch was over, acting like everything was totally fine. Even Formate ended up deciding, though, her tears were welling up with every word. He was back in the restaurant with her within a week. Then we never saw them again. Never again with the wife and kids either. Always wondered if he got caught in the end. At the end of the dinner, 2 couples on a double date dine and dash. I chased them down and the girls had no clue. Their dates had told them they already paid. The girls ended up paying, the guys had no cash. I worked at a bar where like 50% of our business was from Tinder dates. This one time, 2 guys came in separately and sat at different tables by themselves along the same wall. They were both facing the door and clearly waiting for dates. Eventually, a woman comes in, walks up to the closest guy, sits down, and they start chatting. They start ordering drinks. After approximately 5 minutes, the other guy, who is still waiting by himself, gets up and walks over to the couple. He says hi to the girl and is like, aren't you so-and-so? So-and-so we were supposed to be meeting? She was clearly flustered. Lots of so we were super be meeting, awkward laughter, and she gets up and goes with the other guy to the other table. Couple minutes later, the other woman shows up and sits with the first guy, and he tells her all about it. LOL. Lady comes in to get a table, says she's expecting a man and gives us a brief description. He shows up about 10 minutes later, and she starts saying she knew it. He looks very surprised and scared. I took a drink order, and when I get back, they are gone. The hostess fills me in that in my absence they had a heated but civil exchange. The man was married to the lady's cousin, also the lady was married. Apparently they had been texting for a while after meeting via Craigslist personals. I'm assuming the married but looking section. Don't know if they hooked up in the end or just called the whole thing off. In short, he got there early and let me know it was a first date, which was a lunch date. When she got there, they started chatting, and he ordered a drink and she ordered a water. After a few minutes, he skipped on appetizers, and every so often I would go by to see if they would like to order. She would open her mouth to speak, and he would interrupt with something like they were fine at the moment. Well, this went on for a while. I even tried to just take hers, but he would insist they were okay for now. So he kept ordering drinks, and she kept sipping water. After an hour or so, she said she had to go and just left. He asked me if he did something wrong. I answered honestly with, since it was a lunch date, she probably didn't have too much for breakfast. And if you offer a lunch date she's probably expecting to eat and you wouldn't allow her to order, she's probably starving. He sat there and drank till the end of my shift. Super awkward. Not a waitress, but my daughter and I were having dinner at a restaurant, and the table next to us was a mom, dad, and 2 daughters, maybe 10 and 12. The parents took them out to dinner to tell them they were getting a divorce. Once, as a high school teenager, while waiting tables at a now-defunct Mexican restaurant chain, think Applebee's, but tacos, a first date came in. They seemed unable to converse. It was super awkward. Painful to watch. Well, at one point the woman asked for a refill of her tea. I dutifully went and got the pitcher and came back to fill her glass. While pouring, I literally dropped the entire pitcher, a full gallon of sweet, sticky tea, directly onto her. It went down her shirt. Her skirt, it was everywhere. She was completely and utterly soaked. My newly blossoming career as a server flashed before my incredibly stoned eyes. I apologized profusely. I brought her out like 4,000 napkins. Her date was dumbfounded and probably thinking, didn't think this could get worse, but here we are. Well, she cleaned up the best she could. And they ate their meals. And magically, they began talking. They started looking at each other like a new couple looks at each other. They laughed. They enjoyed their shitty food. She dried out. They left the restaurant an hour later with her arm in his. They gave me the biggest tip I'd ever gotten. I got $20 on a $20 bill in 1996. Somehow, my idiotic high blunder turn the worst first date ever into the best first date ever. I like to imagine them now as happily married, parents of 7 lovely children, who love telling the story of the moron who poured an entire gallon of tea on her 25 years ago. The guy starts talking about how nice it is in the modern day that you can just date without labels. Woman, in suspiciously chipper voice, responds that sometimes labels are really helpful in defining the boundaries of the relationship. Man, very upbeat, replies that sometimes it's nice just to enjoy your time with someone without having to define anything. It was so hard to listen to. The date I saw started off great. I was playing in a band at a small club. There were about 30 people in the club. A couple who had been sitting close together in a corner booth disappeared together into one of the bathrooms. In between songs, when it was quiet in the club, the bartender yells, "They better not be in there fucking on my sink." The whole place turns and stares at the bathroom door, and as we're staring, the couple emerges, smiling at first. Then they look around, see everybody staring at them, and their faces turn a deep color of shame. They quickly paid their bill and left. Not a first date, but a guy decided to propose to a stripper from Scores, high-end joint in NYC. She was stunning. Also in fine dining, he gets on one knee and pops the question, and she goes out loud, "Are you fucking kidding me?" He got up and asked for the check. A middle-aged couple. Man, 30 minutes monologue about the cars he likes, how fast they are, what the challenges are in maintenance. He was literally going on nonstop every time I passed them. Me, arrives with food which made him shut up for like 10 seconds. Woman, taking the sudden silence as her chance to get a word in. Woman, well, I really like butterflies. Awkward silence. Guy continues his car talk until dessert. Curiously enough, they came back 2 more times over the summer. I worked as a barista at a coffee shop with a dishwashing sink that brought you face to face with whoever was sitting at the coffee bar across from you. For some reason, so many people chose this spot for their first dates, so I would have to wash dishes and pretend I wasn't literally on the date with them. One time a person I knew was on their first date with someone and chose that cursed seat across from the dishwashing sink. Because we knew each other, we chatted a little bit, and then as if a partition raised between us, they began their date. But I still had dishes to do. So fucking uncomfortable.